Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. A very exciting topic, very interesting topic that's, I would say, at the top of everyone's mind, at least in the appraisal world and in the data world. So we're here to discuss artificial intelligence versus appraisers and whether or not AI can coexist with appraisers in the valuation industry. And with us today, we have a couple of esteemed guests, both experts in their respective fields. So I'll introduce Lucas Rotter. He is the co-founder and CEO of Valcre. And Valcre is the CRE industry's premier end-to-end appraisal software solution, empowering users with a more organized, efficient, and intelligent path to produce and present their work. So if you want to say hi, Lucas.
Hey, everyone. Looking forward to getting this chat going.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us today. And our other panelist here, Wayne Yu. Wayne is our VP of Data Science at CompStak. And CompStak is a free database for appraisers to access lease and sales comps nationally. We work on an exchange model where appraisers can provide comps in order to take comps out of our database. We have millions across the US. So check us out. My name is Matt Lee. I'm a managing director at CompStak, and I'll be sort of moderating the discussion here. Guess I probably should have gone to this slide first before doing all that, but here you see pictures of us and our titles here. So to get to what we're going to discuss today, we have a number of topics that I think are going to be of interest to everybody. The state of AI today. So we'll cover where we're at, what is the state of the art in the science of artificial intelligence. And then accordingly, the state of appraisal technology today. And then after that, we'll get to how the two sort of interface with each other and what that means for the industry. What are the benefits of using artificial intelligence in the appraisal process and some of the challenges of AI, and then what we can expect going forward. I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball here and go back to the original question here. Can AI coexist with appraisers in the valuation industry? I actually went to a pretty well-known AI engine, ChatGPT, and I asked it this exact question, just curious what it might spit out. And so upon entering that question into ChatGPT, its response verbatim was, absolutely. AI can coexist with appraisers in the valuation industry. In fact, this coexistence is often referred to as augmented intelligence, where AI technology assists and enhances the capabilities of human appraisers. And then it goes on to list 10 or 12 different ways in which that might be the case. I'll refrain from asking right this moment whether or not you agree with that. I think as we get into this discussion, we'll probably arrive at an answer, and we can kind of revisit each of your opinions on that question at the end. And also, speaking of which, at the end, if we have some time left, we'll take some questions from the audience and hopefully get some thoughts and feedback from the audience. So I suppose we'll jump right into it. So the state of AI today, where are we at? And specifically in valuation, Wayne, I'll throw it to you to begin with to answer this question. You're the VP of Data Science again, and you work a lot in this field. If you just want to kind of speak about AI specifically and where we're at as it pertains to commercial real estate and data.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, man. Actually, I asked ChatGPT about how to prepare for this question again, so our answer might be the same. But yeah, I guess I can start from a little bit history about how AI basically is used especially in appraisal and valuation. Actually, in my opinion, AI already has impact already, so but probably in a different form compared to what everybody knows about this generative AI right now. Like AVMs, automated valuation models, are built by machine learning models, built on a lot of linear regression models. Those are already applied in especially mass appraisal models and more on the residential side. We know like public sector also use that for assess the value to evaluate what the property tax should be. So it already has impact. But I guess for this wave of the AI, it really started I think from a few years ago in 2017, Google brand published a paper called Attention is All You Need, which really bringing this concept of machine learning model called transformer that allows really to basically make a new generation of AI. And starting from there, a lot of like data science teams start using this kind of large language models to build out the projects and they use AI to help the day-to-day. For example, we use for this like QA model to extract information, like name entity recognition type of projects to extract from news, right? You train a machine learning model to read the news, tell us what is the price, what is the seller, who is the seller, who is the buyer. So they really start improving sort of the data quality, I guess, in this industry. But really, I guess last year, ChatGPT sort of up the level of the game again, to bring this kind of user interface and train on the better large LLMs to really to allow us to interact with it better and actually has the more knowledge that based on the the information that's available from the internet. So from there, a lot of companies start having some co-pilot AI like GitHub, especially in the software engineering industry, to allow people to have a system essentially, and just can ask the system once you give a direction, it can actually finish the work for you. And that's really essence why people get excited about AI, because that's really becomes helpful in terms of day-to-day. And this year we see actually there are more development from that. There's a framework called LangChain that basically allow the LLM models to interact with the customized APIs, which basically remove the restriction almost from what's available on the internet or public sector. We see Instacart, for example, was able to use that to build the integration from LLM and hook up to their service, right? You can ask the language model, what's the recipe of how to make pasta? They'll suggest, oh, there's tomato sauce you need pasta, of course, and you need butter or whatever. And then they prompt you to their service, their API, right? And at that point, it's not natural language anymore. It was a price, it was what Instacart can offer. And so that's where we are today. It's very interesting that we from the machine learning that can deal with non-language data with the ChatGPT with large language model to fill in and enable human to actually interact with the LLM models through language. And now the language model can actually then integrate it with the other APIs that different companies or services can provide. Then really, I see there's no limit going forward, right? Whatever APIs people can build, or the companies, they can basically integrate with the AI and really create an ecosystem to provide a service. So I think it's really exciting going forward to see how AI will have an impact on the CREs or appraisal industry.
Yeah. I mean, the possibilities really are endless. It's cliche to say, but like you described a couple of things there. I'm like, yeah, that's brilliant. Like there's so many different applications. And speaking of which, Lucas, you co-founded and run an appraisal technology company. Obviously AI is a big topic in that industry. I'm sure you get asked about it all the time. How do you see the specific application of valuation, and what are the sort of the cool things that you're thinking about as you look at the landscape?
I think in general, a lot of folks are pretty intimidated by AI within valuation. It's still pretty new to a lot of folks, just being pushed into the public sphere, late last year when ChatGPT really came into the public space and open. And the inputs are really critical when you're going through that process and how you ask questions, in natural language. And it's really resulted in adoption being relatively, pretty low in the valuation space across the board. But I think that's just because people are, still becoming curious and learning more about it. And there's also this sense of, the information that you're submitting into these, publicly available large language models like ChatGPT, that information is now public domain. So you're giving up some confidentiality through that process. And, with appraisers being really held strict to confidentiality of proprietary data of their clients, protecting that is really important. So overall, this has led to some lower adoption for appraisers, but that doesn't mean that appraisers aren't dabbling in it and using it for other uses, within the wider their business uses, in terms of using it for marketing and crafting information and blogs and strategizing, as well as business development, analyzing their business plans and development of their growth goals, writing procedures and organizing schedules. And within their appraisal work, they're definitely able to use it for different areas. I've talked to many appraisers who are starting to use ChatGPT to help them to write some of their local area analysis of different properties. And so giving them really a starting point of them actually writing that market analysis, and then they have to go in and add in additional detail. But there's definitely been some still prominent issues of the models hallucinating and providing false information. These large language models are used, data that was used to create these large language models is lots of information from the internet, and as we know, plenty of information on the internet is false and not true. So it's something that appraisers have to be particularly careful of, that they're not getting false information through that process. So we're still in the early innings, I think, of the adoption of AI within the evaluation space and a sort of day-to-day, but it's definitely, as Wayne said, been in use for quite a long time on the data science side.
Right. Yeah, and I guess one thing that we talk a lot about, and maybe it's becoming less so over the last few years, but just the commercial real estate industry's general sort of apprehension towards new technology. We're a very old industry. We've been doing things the same way for a long time, and so I think there probably is generally a sort of reticence to adopt new things, particularly within commercial real estate. But you make a good point that maybe not necessarily for writing the report itself, or just being careful with the data, but a lot of the ancillary tasks that go along with the job, that it could be really helpful for that. And that's actually one of the things that ChatGPT mentioned, which is just using AI to sort of automate some of the routine tasks, such as topics for AI panels. On to the next question. What is the state of technology generally, I guess, in valuation? Like, what are you seeing out there that's cool and innovative? What are you guys doing, and so forth?
I mean, we really have seen a strong acceleration of adoption in the evaluation space. And, COVID was a, large impetus for driving that adoption, because there was a, drive for people wanting to be more collaborative. They're separated and having to work from home and things like that. Well, that causes you to have to adopt technology that helps you be more collaborative and helps you to get more done with the tools that you have. And so it really is, technology is really helping appraisers to get easier access to data. Tools like CompStak and others out there that provide that data side. Data is a really important aspect within the appraisal process. Technology is allowing appraisers to do more with less, right? They're able to be more efficient. They're able to leverage that technology to automate some of those tasks that they're already, doing, as you mentioned. It's also allowing for faster digestion of data to show trends. Appraisers are eagerly seeking the latest technology tools to elevate their capabilities. And as competition intensifies, appraisers understand the critical role of cutting edge technology in securing valuable assignments and things that help them to be more efficient and win over their competitors.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like at some point, the industry is going to adopt certain technologies that are going to make life a lot easier. And it's almost an inevitability that everyone does it, or you just kind of get left in the dust. And especially as there's been a lot of consolidation in the appraisal world, with companies with deep pockets and new technologies. And at the same time, there's a big democratization of technology and tools out there, such as yours, that make life a lot easier. And I think it's probably inevitable that we get there eventually. It's just a matter of when and not if. What are the advantages of using AI in appraisal? I will, well, whoever wants to take this, I guess, can jump in.
Cool. Go for it, Wayne.
No, if you want to go.
I think one of the significant benefits of using machine learning and property valuation is really the ability to collect and analyze vast amounts of data, right? Machine learning algorithms can process data from multiple sources, including property listings, public records, satellite imagery, previous reports, just tons of different sources to pull all that data together. And we're creating so much data every day with normal uses of what everyone's doing. And so being able to process all that data very quickly, that's one of the big, really huge advantages of using AI, is just the ability to process all that information. Other things would be, time savings of, using artificial intelligence to help automate speeds of repetitive tasks, enhancing the accuracy, it's obviously processing a lot of that data and making sure that, you're not missing anything, especially when they're diverse data sets. Having efficient workflow, so streamlining those processes and improving your efficiency. Real-time market analysis, AI can continuously monitor real estate markets, offering up-to-date information on changing, market conditions and economic indicators. AI can also be, used to help to reduce bias, right? AI is, driven algorithms minimize human errors and biases, resulting in, more reliable and consistent appraisal reports that adhere to, things such as USPAP and, other standard report demographics.
Yeah.
Wayne, any additional thoughts there?
Yeah, I definitely agree. AI can definitely help collect more information. With more information, we can make a more accurate or appraisal result. But that's one interesting is that AI it can avoid bias, but also it could intentionally create as well. So I believe everybody has experience playing with like ChatGPT. Actually, behind the scene, there's a parameter called temperature. So you can actually sort of tune up how ChatGPT add colors to the information you want to provide. And that's actually interesting, basically seeing that if you apply it to like real estate, you can imagine if AI that's feeding you the market analysis response, for example, we actually can tune it to give us bullish point of view or bearish point of view of our market. And we can then decide how to use it, right? You can find basically the positive argument about market trending or some, bearish view about how market could be trending down. And then with all these sort of arguments, then we can make a best decision on, okay, what's the really high probability that's going to be the real case. And depends on your role for appraiser, you're probably more, objective, right? You want to find what's really true. But from the lender or from even like a private equity, like investor point of view, you can find the argument that fit best for your use case. And that's what's really interesting, because the capability for you to retrieve the amount of information, you can actually decide. You see all the basically possibility, and you make a decision on how you want to utilize it. I think it's definitely one interesting use case or benefit of using AI. Another thing I think it would be helpful is for like a more scenario analysis. So a few years ago, MIT actually published this paper about how daylight will have impact on the office space value. We have a link that we can share with everyone through the chat. But essentially, this kind of simulation, a few years ago, even say MIT, can only be done through academic, paper, right? It doesn't really have the real impact yet. But through this AI revolution, I believe it basically is going to make this kind of simulation be much easier to be performed, right? Because the whole series about how the building near you, based on how tall it is, based on the position, it can have impact blocking the sunlight for you. So you might have positive or negative impact based on the situation. So putting to real life, right? If you're new construction and nearby, that's going to be built up in the next 2 years. I think it would be very interesting to do that kind of a simulation and actually see what's the impact for your subject property. So really AI, because AI is not just natural language kind of AI. This generative AI can be to build for computer vision as well. And so in that case, we can, if you use everything put together, we can actually model out the environment, right? And put like a 3D model as well to measure what kind of impact it's gonna have for real estate. So a lot of this kind of scenario analysis and simulation actually definitely will be interesting and very beneficial to use AI to do, because without AI, it really it's really hard to perform at scale. So this is something else is interesting, how the technology that can have impact on the industry.
Yeah, and speaking of sort of the democratization of it and what could previously only be done in an MIT lab with huge amounts of data are now available to the public and people within our professions. Fantastic. And the article that you're referring to, or that was published, I believe we've linked to it in the chat that everybody can see. So definitely check that out. So specifically in terms of the accuracy of valuations, how does AI help with that? Wayne, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think it will be one thing interesting is that AI the capability to collect information, right? And not just about comparables. Of course, there'll be more comparable we'll be able to collect, right? So CompStak we're able to use AI to collect and provide more comps, and the information retrieval will be much easier for you to find the right kind of comparables. I think there's a lot of like filters that cannot be applied right now will be available because of AI. I think because you can basically extract more detailed information, like construction style, what type of building it is. It's no longer class A, class B, class C. Okay, you can really sometimes there's kind of architecture like that kind of features can be applied. So really the quality of our comparables will be definitely be better. Also another interesting I think that can enhance the accuracy is the capability of collect data. If you think about if we not just provide information but also collecting like adjustment rates, right, from the appraisal reports. If because appraisers sometimes a lot of us decisions have been done through experience. So experience is very important. So you don't always have full information. But if we actually can feed those information into AI and basically have it trained on these scenarios and adjustment rates, basically AI will become probably the most experienced appraiser like ever exist. So that's definitely something interesting. If we're able to feed those information, because AI now can read the articles very easily. So if we just feed them in, I believe this definitely have very positive impact about sort of AVM model revolution to create more accurate valuation.
Right. And Lucas, your thoughts on this?
I think, in general, AI can really help the accuracy of, really understanding what the data is, helping appraisers to understand and helping them to make their own conclusions, right? Within the appraisal space, an appraisal is an opinion of value, and that's really based on the appraiser, coming to that conclusion based on the data that they're, analyzing and utilizing. And, as you said in the beginning of the kickoff here, really having the AI coexist with appraisers is helping them to augment and helping them to come to those decisions faster. And so, using AI can help you, clean the data. It can help you, really understand what's in that data. But, at the end of the day, garbage in, garbage out, right? So you got to make sure that whatever data you're feeding into the AI is actually true and accurate. And so, AI can certainly help you to understand, does this fall outside of certain norms or certain, consistent trends that have pre-existed beforehand, but it can also perpetuate those inaccuracies if you, don't not feed that information in on the front end. But in general, there are other areas where you can use AI to enhance the accuracy, and even in terms of like photo recognition within areas like building attributes and amenities, analyzing photos to understand what's in those photos and what is the quality and condition, and can really help you come to an not only unbiased opinion of what's in those photos, but also making sure that you're not forgetting anything, right? You see all that information because it can quickly process through thousands of photos very quickly, whereas for appraisers that will take much longer time to do.
Right. Yeah, and then I guess conversely, what are the limitations of AI in this context? And you had mentioned, just to start it off, Lucas, perpetuating certain inaccuracies or biases in the data itself, and even by perpetuating it, probably amplifying it, if you think about it. So what are your thoughts on the limitations, Lucas, of AI and valuation?
Yeah, I think some AI models really lack transparency in how they arrive at their decisions, making it really challenging to understand the reasoning behind their predictions. And the use of AI and valuations can raise ethical concerns such as fairness, bias, potential discrimination by using data that's perpetuated. And so it's really important to ensure responsible and ethical use of AI within the valuation industry. And I think other limitations of just AI in general is that it's very expensive, right? Creating these large language models is quite expensive to do. I mean, at a minimum, you're spending $5 million to be able to provide a lot of information to have your own large language model and have a proprietary data set where you could feed it through with all of your information from a company and be able to provide that and have it return results based on your own data. And so, until that cost really comes down, there's definitely going to be a limitation of being able to have a little bit more control on, how that large language model is impacting the business and, using it specifically for the business case that you have there, right? ChatGPT is analyzing, everything on the internet, right? It's really pulling in from many different sources that could be conflicting. And so if you provide that your own large language model, your own data set, and you have that, augmented with, other data that you have within your property database or comparable database, can really help you generate that information much faster and, more tailored to your business cases and needs.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about the cost aspect, but that's a very good point. Wayne, where do you see the drawbacks of AI in this context?
Yeah, definitely echo what Lucas said about the source, right? I think especially for appraisal, the source the source of right? The verification of that's very important. That's definitely where I think the AI is having the limit. It's not doing a good enough job in terms of managing that kind of metadata about where this source is coming from, right? What's your reference? There are basically workaround with that. Right? I see in the chat that there's some open source AI models that you can be integrated into your own environment, so you can actually control that. Use AI search as like a search engine, and you can integrate with your internal database, so you can actually have the control for your internal sources. So this AI asks, give me a comp in 1 Main Street. And you can find 5 comps, and actually exactly where it's coming from without being worried about it's just some false message somebody published on internet and AI learn from that. So but in order to do that, you kind of still need to require to develop your own modification of the AI that's based on the open source like OpenAI API or the language models. But definitely that's still a limitation. You still need to do some amount of work to do that. So yeah, I would say the verification of the source is still the main challenge now. Yeah.
And I think we could probably agree that one of the big drawbacks on AI is, it might be helpful for some more of the I guess standard valuations, maybe like a Walgreens portfolio or something like that. It's very consistent, but in specialized valuations where there's not a lot of data, especially consistent data on like say golf courses, for example, if you're valuing that, or marinas, or some of the atypical assets, that there are definitely going to be limitations there. And speaking even further on the limitations, as I mentioned, I asked ChatGPT, can they coexist? And it said yes, and it gave this big lengthy list of all the reasons why it can help. And one of the reasons that it listed as a help was specialized valuations, which I think we would probably disagree there. And there is another demonstration of the limitations of AI. So moving on here, how will, in specific terms, AI-enabled technology be used? And Lucas, you kind of alluded to this with the pictures and being able to sort of extrapolate or take away using AI to pull attributes of properties from pictures. That's a really cool application. If you want to speak more on that and anything else that you might see.
I think in general, AI and machine learning and generative AI is really going to become more and more of a prevalent item within the broader commercial real estate space, but also within the appraisal space as the technology is refined more and more and really refined to the uses that can be useful for appraisers. And I think it's going to become more commonplace in different aspects of the report. For valuation experts, it's really about having that human in the loop, data aggregation and insights. And in general, human appraisers possess contextual knowledge that AI can't replicate entirely. And so it's really about augmenting that experience that appraisers have with this new technology. And and really allowing them to utilize it within their reports, whether it's analyzing large data sets, whether it's analyzing, photos and processing that information, or even utilizing it to help write certain parts of the report, or at least give them a baseline, right? And that's going to come down to being able to, ask the right questions to AI and being able to garner the results that you're expecting to get from there.
Wayne?
Yeah, I definitely see it can be used as like a co-pilot or like a assistant fashion. Actually, it's interesting. I talked to an appraiser a couple of days ago who kind of complains about he spent a lot of time writing an appraisal report. There's always like a story narrative he has to write, but in the end, what people really cares about is the value, right? But it still takes a lot of time to write out those narratives and it makes the market analysis, all of that. So AI definitely can help on that. So you can give like basically the highlighter, the spirit of the story, and you can sort of save a good chunk of amount of time that needs to be spent on English writing, essentially. So that's definitely an interesting case. And also about it, like sort of the domain, I think can be applied. I really think because of this the sort of benefit we talked about earlier, I do see the CRE industry might be getting a little more adoption going forward, especially for like simpler properties. I don't see AI will be widely used for complex appraisals or high value deals over 20 million, something like that. But for like single tenant, at least that kind of retail building, I believe there will be more adoption for either from lender side or either from appraiser industry side to able to use more AI and to generate a report like that.
Yeah, and ultimately, I suspect it will be very difficult, if not impossible, to replicate human intuition, and that's such a key element into basically every aspect of life, and appraisal is no different, particularly with these specialized assets. So we've talked here about a lot of different aspects, a lot of it theoretical, some of it practical, but it's worth going into some of the actionable insights that we can take away from this, and what we might be able to suggest to appraisers in terms of technology and specifically AI and what they can do with it. So I'll just kind of run through these bullet points here and leave some time at the end to add on any additional insight, Wayne or Lucas, if you have any. But embracing the exploratory stage. So at least keeping an open mind, I would say, to new technologies, giving it a try. And you may not work these into your workflow immediately, but I think it's worthwhile to at least give it a shot, try it out, keep an open mind about the possibilities that it might be helpful. And then using AI responsibly and in conjunction with human expertise, or that human intuition that we just spoke about. And we talked about some of the ways that AI is limited, whether it's just sort of spitting out the information that's available to it, which could be inaccurate or reflect some sort of bias, but just keeping that in mind and realizing the limitations of it, and keeping an open mind again. Spoke about that, and being aware of the model's limitations and lack of transparency there, but also just staying up to date. I would say just attending webinars like this and events where there are panels and discussions on the state of the art and the state of the science of the technology, and thinking about it from the perspective of how it might be able to help, if only for some of the tangential activities that we have in our job. So with that said, I think we have a few minutes left here. We could, and I see that we have some questions here in the chat. I'll just kind of review these and throw some out there. One question here from an anonymous attendee. What about appraisal review? It seems like that might be sort of a natural place for AI to begin to be helpful in the process. Lucas, can you just tell us a little bit about, for those of us who aren't super familiar, what appraisal review is, the role that it plays, and whether you see AI being helpful in that?
Yeah, I think this is a great application of using AI within the valuation space. Really what a review consists of is, an appraiser is going to be assigned an appraisal. They're going to go out and do the appraisal. They're going to collect all the data that they think is pertinent and important to help them derive their conclusion. They're going to, assign it a opinion of value and, effectively hand across that, 50, 100-page report back over to, the bank's reviewer side, or, whomever they're doing that appraisal for. And, a review can really help to understand, are the conclusions that are used and the assumptions used within this appraisal report, are they within the, general, confines of what's an acceptable assumption, right? And if they fall outside of those, is there a reason as to why, right? You're concluding a, very high cap rate or a very low cap rate, outside of, what the historical trends would sort of purport. Why is that? Really drilling into that and being able to provide that information very quickly. That can definitely help with review and being able to benchmark the data that's provided in that appraisal report to, previous appraisal reports that have been done in similar property types or similar areas, and being able to understand, what's different about this asset, and being able to quickly identify that to key in, so you can, not have to waste a lot of time, in other areas of the report that are, not talking about those specific aspects that stand out.
Right. And I would imagine that at least part of the review process is making sure that the report is just written properly and structured properly in accordance with USPAP. And I can imagine that it's going to be helpful in that regard too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's a question. I'm not sure. It was from an anonymous attendee. I'll let whoever wants to grab it. But if you're having AI write part of the reports, how do you handle client confidentiality and not run into the lawyer case, quote unquote, where all the AI made up a lot of the precedent cases? I don't know if that's a little in the weeds, in the appraisal weeds, or Lucas, if you have any insight there.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I've talked to many appraisers about, and how many appraisers have tried to start using AI within their reports. One example I talked about earlier was writing a local area analysis, right? And so you're not really providing any proprietary data or confidential data within that. You're saying, hey, my property's in Midtown New York. Write me a local area analysis that describes the area in terms of amenities, main thoroughfares, things like that are more it's data that exists outside of proprietary data for a client specifically. And so that's one area where you can have AI write that, and you can't really take that as everything's going to be true in there, because obviously it's gathering data from many different sources that may be untrue, but it can definitely give you a sense of here's a starting point, right? If you have some writer's block or whatever it might be, you're prompting AI to help give you a starting point. You're jumping in and then you're adding in additional information and details, because AI is it's only analyzing the data that it has at that point. It might not know that there's a new building being built on one corner, and what that building is going to be. It may not have access to that information. And so as an appraiser, that market area very well, because you've done research and you have competency, and so you can add in and layer in that information and enrich that data that is being provided by the AI. And so, at the end of it, you have a completed local area analysis. Hopefully, you were able to write that much faster and more efficiently than just starting from scratch. And I think that's one area where you're avoiding having AI cite sources that don't actually exist, right? In that lawyer case where they were citing case law that didn't actually exist anywhere. I've definitely heard of appraisers having trying to provide prompts for other aspects of the report, and actually being served back references to valuation periodicals and books, and then going and actually looking up where that information should be, and it just doesn't exist. And so they very easily can see it's making up sources and hallucinating and providing that information. So appraisers have to be particularly careful when they're trying to depends on what information they're trying to get out of the large language models.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't heard of that phenomenon, the hallucination phenomenon, until just now, to look more into that. Wayne, we touched on a couple questions there. I didn't know if there was anything that you heard that you wanted to comment further on.
You mean like a new question from the chat?
Yeah, just anything there that caught your ear that you wanted to speak on, but we can yeah, go ahead.
I do see an interesting one about like training our own.
Yeah, I
AI.
was gonna actually get to
Yeah.
that.
I actually I never really trained a large language model because it costs a lot of money to do the amount of GPU resources required. But honestly, I don't think we need to. I briefly mentioned a framework called LangChain, which means a language chain like LangChain. Essentially allow us to use the existing open source language model to interact with the data we have, right? So in that case, you don't really need to retrain completely. You can, well, of course, we can fine tune the existing LLM if you want. If you want to sort of the language sounds more like appraiser, you can actually feed in all the appraisal report you have and use so they will learn the language that is more often used. If that's your goal, but if your goal is more about like just integrate your own data with them, you don't actually need to retrain completely. You can just use the language model as like really a search engine and use that to interact with your data. If anyone's interested, I definitely recommend Andrew has a very good course in deep learning AI. You can check out how to do that technically.
Yeah, cool. Definitely will. And if anyone didn't catch what Wayne was referring to there was a question Michael Proa had asked, or maybe more of a comment, that there is a way to run a local version on your PC called GPT for All that allows you to adjust some settings and sort of train your own LLM or large language model. So that's good to know. I think unless there's any other questions there in the chat that anyone wants to grab, I think those were probably the most interesting ones. So we can leave it there. And if anybody wants to learn more about Valcre or CompStak or has any questions, here's the various ways that you can reach us across the whole social media landscape. Definitely check out Valcre. We're as well as CompStak, we're at all the shows together, and stop by the booths and say hi. I'm sure there'll be plenty of opportunity to do that. And Wayne, Lucas, thank you very much for joining us here today. It's really been a pleasure to get your insight into this, and definitely interesting times, as someone in the comments had said. So we're looking forward to seeing what unfolds, and I'm sure we'll be bringing you back to talk about it.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Lucas.
Thanks, guys.